Hey YouTube, what's going on? Snowflake Emos here today with another deck profile. It is my Magnet Warrior Imperium Magnum Turbo. Magnet Warriors are a Yugioh archetype from the Duel Monsters era that has always been a favorite of mine, and I've had a hold of this deck for a little while, so I got a build here. This build aims to turbo out Imperium Magnum, the big fusion monster. It's a 4,000 attack monster that's got an omni negate for monsters, effects, spells, or traps. And the goal of this deck is to kind of get two of them out with some other forms of disruption to make a very powerful, disruptive turn one board. So with that said, let's get into the cards. Starting off with our monsters, I am playing 3 copies of Berserkion, the Electro Magna Warrior, one of the main deck boss monsters of the deck. It's one of our named materials needed for our fusion of Imperium Magnum. It is a 3,000 attack monster. It cannot be normal summoned or set. It's got to be special summoned from your hand by banishing an Alpha, Gamma, and Beta, the Electro Magnet Warrior, from your field or graveyard. So that means once you've got all 3 Magnet Warriors in rotation, you can banish them all off to summon this guy. He does have the ability to banish a Magnet Warrior monster you control to pop a card on the field, and of course when he is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon out a copy of your Alpha, Gamma, and Beta, the Electro Magnet Warrior, that is banished. So that makes him pretty cool. So he's pretty useful even if you don't have him used as fusion material. Definitely a cool boss monster for the deck. Next is 3 copies of our Valkyrian the Magna Warrior. This is the classic boss for Magna Warrior, 3,500 attack. Now this guy can only be summoned, of course, if you tribute off the original Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, which we are not running in this deck. So basically, the only reason he is in here is because he's the other named target for Imperium Magnum, the other named target for the fusion, and of course, because when Imperium Magnum is removed from the field, he floats into a Berserkion and a Valkyrion, ignoring their summoning conditions, so then you can get him out that way. So that's pretty cool. We have 3 copies of this card because we definitely want to see it, and excess copies, of course, can be floated into, especially because in this deck we are trying to make multiple fusions. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Alpha, the Electro Magnet Warrior. Really cool card for this deck, 1,700 attack, 3-star normal summon. That allows us to play him and then use his effect. If this card is normal special summon, add a level 8 Magna Warrior monster from our hand. This can give us Berserkion or Valkyrion, whichever one we are looking for. And then, of course, all the Magnet Warriors have an effect that during your opponent's turn, you contribute this card to special summon a level 4 Magnet Warrior. So that's usually one of the old ones or the new Gamma or, the new Delta or Epsilon. In this build, however, you're going to see that we are not utilizing that effect, although arguably you could throw in Delta as a one-of if you wanted to. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Beta, the Electromagnet Warrior. This one is cool because while it's got 1,500 attack, when this card is normal or special summon, you can add a level 4 or lower Magnet Warrior monster from your deck to your hand. Normally using this to seek out Alpha because we're looking for Alpha to get Berserkion. But, that's pretty cool. Beta, the Electromagnet Warrior, also has the effect where you can tag out for another Magnet Warrior, so not bad. And lastly, I'm only playing 1 copy of Gamma. I could argue that this could be it too, but I've replaced the second copy for another card. Gamma, the Electromagnet Warrior, if this card is normal or special summoned, allows you to special summon another Magnet Warrior out of your hand. Now that's nice because we can play Gamma and then summon Beta or Alpha, and that gives us 2 level 3 rock materials, which we can use to make our Gorgonic Guardian that we are playing in the extra deck, which is nice. Other than that, doesn't really have much use. He's only got 800 attack, 2,000 defense is alright, but, and of course he serves as the 3rd name for us to summon out Berserkion. And last for the monsters, I am playing 2 copies of Gorgonic Gargoyle. Gorgonic Gargoyle here is an interesting monster. It's a 3-star rock monster that just says when you normal summon a rock type monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. So if this card's in your hand, of course, you can special summon it when you normal summon your rock type monster. That means if you don't have Gamma, but you have Alpha or Beta, you can play Alpha, special summon this, and again, that gives you our second material to make Gorgonic Guardian, which is a very powerful disruption tool to add to our turn 1 board. And with that, that is the monsters. Next, going into our spell cards, I am playing 3 copies of Polymerization, the iconic classic fusion spell. Polymerization just is the spell card that allows us to fuse 2 monsters listed as material for a fusion summon and fusion the monster out. And this way we can play this and get out an Imperium Magnum from our extra deck, given that we don't have an archetypal fusion spell. Next, I'm playing 2 copies of Fusion Sage. Fusion Sage is just a spell that searches Polymerization from the deck. Uh, you know, perfectly fine. We want to see Polymerization, so I'm going to play some cards to get it. You could also play King of the Swamp, but you can't really use King of the Swamp as a substitute material, so it doesn't matter which of the 2 you're using. Next, I am playing 3 copies of Magnet Induction. Magnet Induction is a really great spell. If you control a Magnet Warrior monster whose original level is 4 or lower, you can special summon a level 4 or lower Magnet Warrior monster from your deck with a different name than the card you control, and for the rest of this turn, your Magnet Warrior or Magnet Warrior monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle or your opponent's card effects. So that's pretty nice. That means this spell means that any of our Magnet Warriors can tutor out any of our others. So if we have beta, we can get into alpha. If we have alpha, we can get into a beta summon, and this way easily gets our 1 gamma out of the deck too, which is very handy. So it's a pretty good card. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Fusion Conscription. This build is built around getting into Imperium Magnum, so Fusion Conscription here can just search either Berserkion or Valkyrion by revealing Imperium Magnum, and I add one of the named materials for it from the deck to my hand. The only thing to note is whichever card I add, I cannot activate or use its card effects this turn, so I can't add Berserkion and then summon it with this, but that's fine because whichever one I'm adding with this, I just want to use as fusion material. It's a really handy way to get Valkyrion, which isn't going to be doing anything for you. And lastly, I am playing 3 Pot of Extravagance in this deck. A little bit of a risk because we can get a board of 2 Imperium Magnum set up, and there is a possibility that this will banish 2 Imperium Magnum, but the extra card is just too important to really set up the board that I can't pass up on playing Extrav. We banish 6 extra deck cards to draw 2. Can't do any more drawing, so that's fine. As long as we don't banish 2 Imperium Magnum, we are okay. Sometimes that happens. Very low percentage, though, but sometimes that's just the risk when you got to play a deck like this. And that is it for the spell cards. Next up, going into our traps, I am playing 3 copies of Necrofusion. Necrofusion is a really cool trap card that I'm a big fan of, and this is definitely a deck where I found a home for it. Necrofusion is just a trap that allows us to fusion summon a fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing the materials from your graveyard face down. So what's nice about this is if we get our Berserkion, our Valkyrion, and Poly on the opening turn, we can, of course, fuse those off into an Imperium Magnum. Then our Berserkion and Valkyrion are sitting for us in the graveyard to use Necrofusion and summon out a second Imperium Magnum. Now the reason this is cool is that Imperium Magnum does not have a hard once per turn. It's a soft once per turn, so this Imperium Magnum can be an Omni negate, and this Imperium Magnum can be an Omni negate at the same time with a 4,000 attack and 4,000 defense body, which is nice because kind of the goal of this deck is if we have enough disruptions that our opponent really can't do anything on their turn, they're going to be KO'd on their next turn with all this attack power destroying them. So Necrofusion is just a good way to get out a second Imperium Magnum. Very handy. Next, I'm playing 3 copies of Trap Trick, specifically to tutor out our Necrofusion from the deck. We can banish a normal trap card and set a normal trap card of the same name from our deck face down. It can be activated this turn, but only 1 more normal trap can be played. So we can simply banish a Necrofusion, set a Necrofusion, activate a Necrofusion, get an Imperium Magnum. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Summon Limit. Summon Limit is kind of an emergency button in this deck that, if my hand's not great for the big Imperium Magnum negate setup, I can use Summon Limit to help slow down and stall for a future turn where I can set up and fuse an Imperium Magnum. Summon Limit is, of course, just a continuous trap card. This is neither player can summon more than twice. On our first turn, we might be summoning a bit more than twice, but kind of after that, this deck really slows down and certainly can play at a slower pace. The Berserkions come in handy at this point once you've got all the Magnet Warriors on the rotation. So Summon Limit just makes a good way to help slow things down for us to get our Imperium Magnum combo. It's also nice to have in addition with our Imperium Magnum because once you have summon limit, you can save your negates a lot more because if you know you're going to be stopping them from comboing off, maybe you're not worried about some of those little monster effects that pull out another monster because you're just going to hit them with the summon limit afterwards. So summon limit, incredibly powerful trap, does a lot of work against a lot of good decks, and we need to stop those. And last for the trap cards, I am playing 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Solemn Judgment is just a nice counter trap that we can add to this board. It's pay half our life points to negate a spell, trap, or monster summon. And that's perfectly cool. What I like about this card is, just seeing it as the extra card in our hand is not bad because combining this with an Imperium Magnum adds an extra negate to the equation. And of course, that just makes our board a little bit stronger. Now, it's not like Imperium Magnum where we get that extra negate every turn. But having this extra negate on the turn we need it, when our opponent really is trying to play through it, works out well. The only thing that doesn't work out well, of course, is if I have this card when I'm trying to trap trick into Necrofusion. It's nice if I just draw Necrofusion and can play this, but it's a good tool to have regardless. And that is it for the main deck. Now, going into our extra deck, of course you need 15 cards to make full use of Pot of Extravagance, but there are only 2 particular cards I have really to talk about here in my deck, each maxed out at 3. First off is our copy of Imperium Magnum, the Superconductor Battlebot. This is the boss of the deck that this whole build of Magnet Warriors is built around. Imperium Magnum, of course, allows us to have an omni negate per turn. It's basically Solemn Judgment. You can negate a monster effect, a spell or trap activation, just once per turn, no cost. It's got 4,000 attack, and of course, when this card is removed from the field from an opponent's card effect, it floats into Berserkion and Valkyrion, which is nice. That's another 3,000 attack monster and a 3,500 attack monster that our opponent has to deal with. And of course, if those materials stick, which can be a lot easier to do if our opponent's under summon limit, then we have the materials to fuse into another one, and that's just very nice. Incredibly cool card. And next up, 3 copies of Gorgonic Guardian. This is the nice other extra deck monster we can make that helps build the strength of our board. It requires 2 level 3 rocks, which is what all our lower level Magnet Warriors and Gorgonic Gargoyle are. Now, of course, Gorgonic Guardian has a nice quick effect that once per turn during either player's turn, we can detach a material from this card to target a face-up monster our opponent controls. Its attack and defense becomes 0, and its effect is negated. So it's a quick effect monster negate, awesome thing to have for any deck, and we'll definitely make use of it here. And of course, during our turn, we can destroy a monster with 0 attack. And that doesn't require material, but we can use Gorgonic Guardian's effect on our turn with the second material to use that, get rid of a monster, and maybe clear the way for our Magnet Warriors to end the game. Or, of course, if a monster just has 0 attack, we can make use of that too. So, it's a pretty good card. As far as the rest of the extra deck goes, definitely a bunch of other good rank 3 XZs are helpful. Things like Wind Up Zenmains can be useful, a Shuriking, but, usually it's just these cards I'm going into. Everything else kind of just ends up being filler. So that is it for my Magnet Warrior Imperium Magnum deck profile. Like I said, it's a very fun deck to just pick up and play casually that, with the right hand can pull out a really powerful turn 1 board. A little inconsistent, but, that's what makes it not a meta contender. But still, a lot of fun to have. Pretty accessible. These cards are pretty easy to get. Not very expensive, so have a lot of fun busting out this deck and playing it. It's really cool to use the Magnet Warriors because they were some of my favorites as a kid ever since I got a hold of that original copy of Valkyrion. So, I appreciate y'all checking the deck profile out. Love to know what you're doing with Magnet Warriors, if you've ever played them before and which is your favorite one, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.